Hello, everyone. Welcome to Planeta Venus Online. This is a special edition of our weekly show in Spanish. This time is going to be in English or Spanglish, if you will. This is an experiment to be more inclusive with Latinos of different backgrounds in Kansas. But most of our guests, all of our guests tonight, they're all Latinos. We're going to be speaking Spanglish, so please join us. And just leave your comments today. We are really celebrating today Democracy Day, which was on September 15th. And I'm going to start showing my guests this afternoon here for you. And then I will introduce them to you as you start joining us tonight. So there you are, all of you. Thank you all for being here. So good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Planeta Venus. Today we have this special segment. And as I said, September 15 was established as Democracy Day in the United States, which is a nationwide collaboration to bring attention to the threats facing American democracy. And it provides the public with the context and information they need and bring us together as media to sound the alarm collectively. So democracy is the right that we all have to have our voices heard. And as we know, voting is the way that we can exercise that right. And the Latino population has grown exponentially and will continue to grow to be the largest minority in the entire country. And so far, we know that governments have not tried very hard to include our voices. And that is why we're here today. We will talk with other Latinos who, in one way or another, have done a remarkable job at including Latino voices in the electoral process. So with that being said, I'm going to start introducing you. We have Luisa Taylor, who is a nurse practitioner. She holds a PhD, and she will tell us a little bit more about herself. And she has been very vocal and active on local and national campaigns in the last few years in making sure the Latinos have access to vote and elections, basically. Welcome, Luisa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
No,
so do you want me to tell more?
If you don't mind, let me introduce all of you, and then I'll give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay.
So with that, thank you. We have Alde Negrete. She has a long history of community organizing and has played a crucial role registering and encouraging Latinos to vote in Kansas, especially in the last few years. Thank you, Alde, for being here. Alejandro Arias Esparza, he has a bachelor's degree in political science and government and already has, and I said already because he's probably one of the youngest in our group today, but he already has plenty of experience on civic engagement, and his work has been focused on Latinos in Kansas and other surrounding areas. Thank you, Alejandro, for being here.
Thank you,
Martin Garcia. He's a surgeon veteran of the Afghan War, a lifelong Wichita resident, and he has worked diligently in the last few years to help advocates voting in local elections. Welcome, Martin.
Hey, thank you guys for having me.
Now is your turn. Now, Luisa, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about you and the work that you do on civic engagement.
No, you did a really great job. Thank you so much for introducing me. So by trade, I am a nurse practitioner, and that is definitely my day job. I work really hard in providing primary care to especially the Hispanic Latino community because I'm able to provide care in Espanol, which is really great in some areas that we're underserved in. But outside of my work, I do a lot of volunteerism. I did start with the League of Women Voters in 2016 when I first gained my citizenship. And really mobilizing voters to get out and do the hard work, right? Register voters, go to new ceremonies, new naturalization ceremonies, and register new voters there. Any volunteering that we could do, I tried to be involved in. That kind of led me to the National She Is Me campaign with the League of Women Voters, which really aimed to introduce all kinds of voters to the national public. So yeah, that's kind of my background in voting and civic engagement, which is, I think, something that everybody could do.
Thank you, Luisa. Let's go to Alejandro since he's next in my screen.
Sure. Thank you, Claudia, so much. And thank you, Luisa, for being here too. So my name is Alejandro Ares Esparza. I am from Wichita, and I've always had a passion for civic engagement and more specifically voter engagement. Since my time in college, I was involved in a variety of voter turnout campaigns, registration, just outreach events, whatever I could do. And in a previous role, I actually served as the civic engagement manager at the Kansas Leadership Center, where I sort of helped bring in some more of the Latino voice in a variety of different civic engagement projects. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, especially with Claudia, Luisa, Martin, and Aude, who I know have done some really great work. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's go to Martin.
Hello, everybody. Claudia, thank you for having me here. Luisa, Alejandro, Aude. I've seen you guys, read about you, I should say, rather, online and, different feeds on and just seeing what you guys have been doing across the state. So it's admirable. So, like Aude, I've seen your name everywhere within the past couple of years. But that being said, anyhow, I'm a lifelong resident of Wichita. My mother is Chicana. She was born here as well in Wichita. So we've got long-standing ties here generationally. But my dad is from Mexico. He's from Jalisco. So I've had a unique experience of seeing it's not necessarily the Latino experience, but the Mexicano and Chicano experience here within Wichita. And but also I'm a veteran of the Army of the Afghan War. I was in for 7 years. I decided to get into civic engagement because I felt like I fought for the rights that we all need to exercise as Americans. I don't care, what your background is or what side of the aisle you lean on, right or left. But regardless, I try to be a proponent for folks to vote in local elections because it's a whole lot easier for individuals to help churn help turn the momentum in the other direction so that people can be better helped by the public services and by their community. But anyhow, I appreciate you guys having me here, and I hope we have a great dialogue today.
Thank you, Martin. Let's go. Last but not least, Aude. Aude, you're mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Claudia, for creating this space. And I have worked in community organizing for a long time, for a little bit over 20 years. And the reason why I've worked on it for so long, it's because it's what I'm passionate about working with communities of color to ensure we have representation. So I've worked with political parties and elected officials, candidates, and issue-based organizing within the Latino and low-income community. So my passion, whether it's at a job or as a volunteer or as a advisor, it tends to bring me back to organizing and how we're able to work together to ensure that our communities, our Latinos, our communities of color are being represented in our, whether it's through electoral work or through advocacy year round. So that's a bit of me in a nutshell, and I'm so excited to be here with you and talk a little bit about my passion and what I think about quite a bit.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you guys. So let's start with some questions that we have. We just recently worked on an article that we'll be sharing here with the people who on the comments about the Latino vote and how we're becoming the second biggest block of voters. And those numbers are not numbers that they're just predictions from someone who is looking to trends. It's actually happening already. Those Latinos are already in our schools right now. So right now, at this point, how do you guys feel about the Latino representation in the Kansas government?
It's lacking.
And this could be pretty personal. Come on, Martin, let's tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, living in Wichita, again, for most of my life, other than the time I served in the military, I've seen a lot of nonprofits, a lot of people that claim they're about the Latino Hispanic community, however they want to identify us as. But anyhow, a lot of times we're more of a special interest, just like how can I put it? Like pork barrel politics, we're something that they tack on to something as a pet project, and let's help the Latinos out. Honestly, that's the way that it feels. And I'm speaking as a person, like a layman, a person out here on the street. I've knocked door to door and spoke to people, not only on my campaign, but to get Lacey Cruz elected, to get Mayor Whipple elected. And I sat and talked with these people about their actual woes and the things that we were feeling. And they feel out of touch with local politics as a whole here in Wichita. And we, as the largest metropolitan area population wise, we should really be dictating the direction politically and what our state is headed in. And I honestly think that with the abortion referendum, I think that really shows what can happen when we galvanize. And I'm talking about Black, brown, men and women, people from all different walks of life. Sorry, I know I'm rambling here a little bit, but we really just really what people need is to feel engaged. They need to feel like they're a part of the process. And I feel like people are divorced from the political process here in the United States, most especially Chicanos right now. I really like a lot of them will say, well, what good is voting for me? And I don't know if you guys have heard that refrain often said by folks, but most of my family on my dad's side that are all Mexicanos that have gotten their citizenship, they make sure they vote in every election. They make sure they participate in our democratic republics, checks and balances that are set up to make sure that we have the rights that are guaranteed to us as citizens. But again, somebody please take the ball from me. I'll just keep rambling.
So I totally echo what your sentiments. I do think, as far as representation goes in Kansas, we have seen some improvement. I mean, there are, like the Delia Garcias of the world, or, Sarah Lopez is really in there right now. We see a lot of her, especially in local politics. There's always room for improvement. And I don't know about you guys, but I tend to be the only Latina in most rooms that I enter, with the exception of if Claudia's there with me. but there's been, as we see, an upward trajectory in being the majority minority. I do think that we are heading toward a little bit more representation. However, I just don't think that the Hispanic / Latino Latinx community really knows, right? I think we saw that a lot in the 2016 election, at least locally with the groups that I worked with. There were so many Latino members that were like, I don't even know what the heck is going on, especially at the local level, right? The presidential level, most people know, but at the local level, where decisions are really made for you, right? The decisions that really affect you are made. That's where we're seeing, I think, the biggest gap in education or in knowledge. And I don't think we're unique in that. I think that's throughout the United States, but there's no reason why we can't improve that.
Right.
I love that you talked about the different levels in which we can be engaged. Because I feel like oftentimes people think about politics as like the White House and that's it. When in reality, there's so many decisions that are made locally, and politics are local, and they happen at the PTA and at the city council and at the school board meetings. And it's so important for us to be engaged throughout. I feel like oftentimes we think about civic engagement or about Latino representation as a, go to the polling booth and vote, or the person on the billboard or the yard sign, when representation and civic engagement happens throughout the year. And it happens in many different forms. It happens when we call our representatives, and when we are testifying, and we're sending in or notes to our elected officials. I even when I know that my elected official is supporting something I want him to vote on, I still send him a note and say, hey, thank you. Thank you for continuing to support this thing that I am passionate about, because I want to make sure that just like other people are submitting their thoughts and they're trying to sway his opinion, that he also knows that my opinion is out there and it matters, and he's representing it.
It's kind of interesting to hear all of our takes on this, because I share every single one of those sentiments too, right? And I think one that resonated with me quite a bit was what Martin shared about, Latinos are relevant in election season, right? Like they're in our neighborhoods in election season, and it's really hard to like push back on that, because if we look specifically at the Kansas population, we're like, I believe it's like 19%, right? Like 19% of the all of Kansas population, and we're 3% of state representatives, and we're 0.1% of municipal elected officials. So it's really hard for me to say go out and speak to your representative or speak to your elected officials when first there might be a language barrier. Second, there might be a knowledge barrier, right? Because some of that information, when it trickles down, it gets diluted, or it might be too late, right? In some of the work that I did, for example, in like Nebraska, one of the concerns that we've heard was, when we speak about an opportunity or about legislation or policy or whatever it may be, it's always in past tense. It's always, you should have voted for this, or you should have applied for this. So it always makes me wonder, is like, how can I, as a Latino, tell another Latino, go out and expose yourself to this this beast that we call politics, and try not to feel scared, or try not to feel intimidated, when I know that system is scary. So I think that's maybe some of the fear that I have, is just like, it's really hard for me to tell someone, go out and do civic engagement, knowing that the system is not built for us. Like, knowing that the system is not built for, it's not easy to understand either. Because if I have a hard time with it and I studied it, like, I can't imagine how someone else would feel like that maybe doesn't have that background.
I think all of your statements are pretty true. And I want to say, like, in this group, most of us are either immigrants or first generation. So I'm going to guess that most of us have what we call mixed status families, where like some of them can vote, some of them can't. And some of them maybe who are new citizens who, like Luisa mentioned it, Martin mentioned it, and now Alejandro too, they don't have an idea. Maybe even if they want to see change happen, they don't know how to do it. How have you guys been able to start those conversations in your households and your neighborhoods?
Well, for me, has just, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, please, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, for me, it's just been like a very, very open thing. Everybody knows where I stand. I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I think. I have no qualms about discussing. And then I also have no issues sitting down being like, okay, what about this issue, or what about, this representative, or what about what's going on today, or what is the barrier? What are you not understanding, or where can I meet you so that we can have an open discussion about what's happening? How can I help you get registered to vote? Do you need help getting to the polling station? Like, what is your barrier to actually going through with it, So for me, yes, mixed status families, just because they're unable to vote doesn't mean that they can't, do some of the work too. And these decisions affect them. So if we, people who aren't registered to vote for whatever reason, whether it's immigration status or they have a felony or whatever, they can also work to educate the rest of their family members or their communities, whatever their community may be, whether it's at church, whether it's at work, whatever. So I think there's lots of ways that you can engage that. And I try really hard to see this in like a positive manner or spin every difficulty that I see in a way that we can, okay, well, we can't do it this way. How else can we fix this problem? And that's part of me being in healthcare, I think, but also just, knowing that the work doesn't end with just us. It doesn't just end with registering voters, because registering voters is just one very small part of what democracy is about.
Thank you, Luisa.
I think for me, the best results that I saw in like my engagement in my small circles, right? That's what we're talking about, like friends and family, just like that close circle, is just getting the information out there, right? Like being able to, if I'm talking to my mom about it, who maybe she doesn't speak the language, just me being a translator and just being like, this is what this is about, that's what this is about, or whatever it may be. But I love what Luisa said about also engaging the people who maybe are not part of that civic engagement process of voting, because for whatever reason, right? Whether they might be residents, they might be undocumented, they might be DACA, recipients, whatever it may be, but also involving them in that process, and then just being able to say, this is how this could affect you, how it affects me, how it affects whoever it may be. But just being able to make the information accessible, that's the part that I don't understand about government. That's what's so hard to understand about making information easily accessible and easily understandable. Like, we're not saying dumb it down, we're just saying make it accessible and just let us know what you're doing, right? If democracy works, democracy should be transparent.
Right. And one of the things that I like that I think I did mention earlier was that there's different levels that we all can get involved, and maybe we cannot vote, but we can be part of a PTA. And then you, Alejandro, I think you mentioned this monster, and maybe if we start thinking about those things like in smaller steps, where like I remember the first time I sat at a board meeting, and just learning, that was huge for me. And now it's easier for me to navigate those things. So with that, I really want to ask you, in the last few years, we have heard from a lot of activists around the country that our communities are under attack. What do you think it means when they say that our underserved communities are under attack?
Well, I can tell you as a Veterans of Foreign War commander in this state, and before you applaud, I had quite an ignominious end. Now, I was kicked out essentially. I was called a communist and many other things because I wanted to help people on the south side of Wichita on the corridor, most especially around Harry and South Broadway, East Harry and South Broadway. And, we were trying to get some of the Latinos also engaged. A lot of them were patronizing our business and renting out our hall for quinces and other events. But the big thing about it became, the big thing for a lot of the members who are mostly old white Republicans was that all of a sudden they felt like their organization was being usurped from them somehow because they saw some sort of diversity. And that was not the case at all whatsoever. I was trying to include the people that reside in the neighborhood, these new Americans, and show them, because the one of the tenets of the VFW is to promote Americanism and democracy. Now, Americanism can be a very subjective term, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different individuals. But that being said, I really don't feel like there is any desire within the greater community, the greater Wichita area, the metropolitan area, of those that really want to see true diversity and inclusion right now. They're running scared right now. And I had one of my members at the VFW pretty much send me a text telling me to never come back because I was a communist, and that I had essentially, they felt betrayed and fooled. Like they thought I was some kind of card carrying, NRA member, Reagan loved Republican, and they found out. But I was careful about what I divulged to them and who I was. But it felt horrible to be around people that were supposed to be my comrades and people that were supposed to see past color and just see our service and dedication and love for our country. And all they saw was my belief system and that I wanted to help the downtrodden and the folks that are the most in need within our community directly. I'm not talking about homeless people on the street in Seattle. I'm talking about homeless people out here in the street in Wichita. I'm talking about kids that come into VFW, and I can teach them about Americanism and why they need to vote at the age 10, 11, and 12. We were trying to have parties for these kids, but these men, unfortunately, did not want to see these people in there because they are not Americans to them. And so, yeah, we are under attack. I've lost friends that I served in excuse me, I'm getting a little emotional, but I have lost friends I served in the war with that I thought our friendships would last a lifetime. And because I felt that Trump disrespected my gente, my people, my family, it's like, how could I condone someone like that being my commander in chief? I cannot, and a part of that was the reason why I left the Army, the reserves, that is, but essentially, though, I never wanted to put this line in the sand. I never wanted to draw this line and say I have to choose a side. I was made to choose a side, and I have to stick with my family. I love my country, and I would fight for it and die for it any day of the week. But now I feel like I need to ensure the rights, not for some people halfway around the world, but for right here in my backyard at home, because my family's here now. There's no fight left in Mexico. For our people now. We have to stake our claim here. This is our home now. My friend Odineki, he's Kenyan. We served in the war together, a medic, seen some ugly stuff. He wanted to raise his kids here. Now he doesn't want to raise his children in this country anymore because of the way the African Americans are treated, or even African nationals as a whole by African Americans. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can unpack here about the racial situation in America. But I guess essentially the point I'm trying to illustrate, though, is that we are coming apart at the seams right now, and we as a community, as Latinos, however we want to identify ourselves, but we need to come together and start working together as a block, not only as Latinos, but along with our Afro Hispanos as well, and African Americans as a whole. Because once we come together as a voting block, these folks don't stand a chance. That we can vote all these folks out of office, and we can start to put faces that look similar to yours and mine, and share the same core values. Because honest to goodness, the average Latino voter does have a lot of intersecting values with a lot of conservative voters. I mean, there are pockets of them, So
yeah, thank you, Martin.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that last piece, because I think, even in the Democratic Party or even the Republican Party, whatever, they feel like the Latino voters all care about one thing, and that isn't true. When you say Latino, that means, think about how many countries that could represent. I'm from Peru, so okay. It's just really interesting that people think that because we all share this one thing, that we must all believe the same thing. And I think that's a big barrier to political candidates, because they feel either shunned or they feel vindicated by okay, well, the Latino, like I'm Latino, then all Latinos must vote for me. But that's not how that works. There's so many intersecting things that we believe in and that we don't believe in. The Hispanic Latinos tend to be more aligned with Catholicism, for example, which then maybe means that, and I'm very broadly generalizing here, obviously this is not what everybody believes, but like maybe they believe that gay marriage shouldn't exist, or they don't believe in abortion rights, and so marketing, I think, for the Latino Hispanic community, for Latino Hispanic voters, is difficult. On top of that, throughout the US, we're seeing a lot of gerrymandering, which is really making creating a huge problem for people who do need to go out there and vote, just making it more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And you're right. I've lived in different states in the United States, and even the region where we live, I see Latinos from California, for example, very different like the values and the beliefs than Latinos in Kansas. And I'm talking about first generation people, Chicanos, if you want, who come from like, I don't know, New York or California, to very different from Latinos who grew up in Kansas or the Midwest. So with you guys mentioned the percentage of Latinos, and I know that we're not going to see that change overnight, where we're going to go from under 1% of representation to 17 or 19% overnight. But what are, and we have to start working or continue to work also with some of the legislators that we have, and that they want to be, or they call themselves themselves allies. They want to say that they or they tell us all the time that they want to work with Latinos more. But we have talked from the beginning of this show that there's not enough being done in our communities by leaders like us, probably as well, and by government. So what would you tell someone who comes to you, someone that is already in office or who is looking to be elected in this next term, and they tell you like, hey, I really want to do more for the Latino in the community, but I don't know where to start?
I'm so glad you're asking that question, because I've been thinking a lot about it from the several perspectives, not only elected officials, but in general, the how we're engaging or communities of color in our Latino community at all levels of engagement, whether it's programming or school board. How is that engagement, and how can we improve it? And I heard as someone, it was a speaker, as we were talking about this engagement and valuing and truly centering the voices of the Latino community and bridging that divide in general. She said the real question is, what are elected officials doing to deserve the trust of the community? And I feel we talk a lot about, what are Latinos doing to vote? What are they doing to show up or be engaged at the meetings and testify and all of that? But and I think that's important. I think it's important for us to think about what we're doing to bridge that gap. But it's also important for the different levels of elected officials to also think, what am I doing to deserve their trust? And what am I doing to bridge the gap? And there is not a silver bullet, because as you all mentioned, communities are very different. Not from Wichita to Kansas City, there's going to be differences to Southwest Kansas. There isn't going to be one single way we can bridge that divide. So it's about each elected official, depending on what level they are and what city they are, who their constituency is, actively thinking about what am I doing to deserve their trust, and to welcome the Latino community at the table.
I really like what she said there, because that was going to be like my advice to an elected official or to a person representing us at any level, right? Is we're not a monolith. And it is impossible to say the Latino bloc, because there's a lot of blocks within Latinos, right? Like whether you're first generation, whether you are first generation American, whether you are undocumented or a DACA student, you're fifth generation, whatever you may be, we've been here for a while, right? Like this conversation is not new. It's just becoming more relevant because we're growing as a community. So I think if I could, I've shaken hands and I've talked to people about, they say we love the Hispanic community, we want to work with the Hispanic community. It's like, well, which one? Like the ones that are sitting in your cabinet, or like the ones that are out in the fields? Like who do you really want to work with, right? And it's impossible for us to just go out and say, engage us more, when we don't even know how. I have no idea how to engage all Latinos, right? I know how to engage Latinos that I've worked with, but I think my biggest advice would be just don't think of us as a monolith, and make sure that you bring more people to your table, Latinos specifically, of diverse backgrounds too, not just the ones that you happen to know, and not just the ones that you maybe met at a fundraiser or whatever it may be. But like the ones that are working, out, the landscapers, the people who are working maybe at the meat plants in Southwest Kansas, right? Which Southwest Kansas is a whole different conversation. That's a whole different beast. But it's just being true to the fact that we are not a monolith and expressing that openly as well.
Thank you.
My experience as a candidate knocking door to door, where I found you make the most impact is when you give them a little bit more of your time. You sit with them, you drink that bottle of water they give you, and you actually engage them and listen, actively listen. So you guys could all tell I'm a talker. So it was really hard for me um, to take a step back and to listen, but I learned a lot about the woes of individuals here. And the north side here, District 6 is very diverse. I mean, we have predominantly Latino population base, but we have a lot of Caucasians, Black folks, and other folks that live around here. And and you just have to talk about the human condition sometimes, and break it down to them that way, like really. He just really, like I said, it's about honestly expressing yourself. I'll crib something from Bruce Lee. You just got to be real with people sometimes. And the other thing is, I just think folks are really inundated by. I don't think it really matters who the candidate is a lot of times to people, because they feel so inundated by a lot of the information that's just thrown at them, whether it's national politics or dealing with things in their general life. And I asked my mother and a lot of folks, like, what would help you to make a decision a little bit easier? And they said a cheat sheet of sorts would help them, to help them know who to vote for, see if their core values align with them in a general way, or maybe they'll start to do their own thinking and do a little bit more research. Because I believe it was Luisa that mentioned earlier, she talked about felons not thinking they can vote after the fact, like after they paid their dues, they're able to participate in the democratic in our democratic republic again, essentially. And a lot of people here in the North End were under the belief that because they committed a felony at one point that they could never vote again, and a lot of these folks would vote to help the quote unquote disenfranchised, or the folks that are the most neglected within our society, because these people are most likely a part of that tribe. So but the big thing, I think, is just education as a whole. Like, you got to talk to people at a personal level, and it starts at home. It starts in your neighborhood. It starts in your backyard. It's nothing that we can do at a state level that's going to presto change us into the stratosphere of having Latinos voting in mass. So,
Martin, a personal question about what you were doing when you were canvassing, when you say listening to our people. Do you think the people that you talk to open up to you because you spoke Spanish? Or do you think they will be willing to open up even if you don't speak Spanish, if someone comes with an open heart to them?
I think I think we're Latinos as a whole. I think we're just some good-hearted folks. I hate to generalize, but we're kind of the salt of the earth people. I think we try to take everybody at face value and give them a chance to be decent human beings. Especially, when you make your journey here to this country, you want only the best for yourself and others. But I think the language barrier, though, it does dissuade a lot of newer Americans essentially to participate a little bit more in the democratic process. Like my tias, even they voted for me, thank God, but because they also live in the same district as me. But my tia Raquel, to break it down to her, she lived in the rancho her entire life in Jalisco. She came here, lived for the past 10 years. We all help each other get her citizenship here, and she voted for one of the first times for me. So but she wanted to know what issues it affected, and that was the thing of it. She didn't realize that this would help with our roads on this side of town, with the what medical if new medical facilities could be opened, or clinics around here to help the poorer part of our community, other than the Guadalupe clinic, or getting better mental health care, for some folks that are out there too in our side of town, because we deal with a lot of that on the north side as a whole, as a human.
And that really talks to what Luisa was talking earlier, that many times Americans think that we only care about immigration, and that's where they don't want to talk to us because they feel like everything we're going to ask to them is about immigration. And in reality, we care about education, we care about medical, we care about other stuff in the country as well. So I'm sure with all your backgrounds that most than one of you have thought about running for office. So, what do you think Latinos in Kansas need to know or understand about the importance of their voice and their vote? And we're talking to, like, you're right, all of you are right. We're not just talking to one audience right here, but let's talk to like young professionals, people who can vote, but maybe they don't have that culture because their parents didn't know how. We never talk about it at home. So, let's talk about all those young Latinos who are getting ready to vote and they have no idea how to do it, or why, because especially when we know that a lot of people think that presidential elections are important. Many people have told me, like, why do we vote if Kansas doesn't count, or like, all those things that we are might be misinformed or disinformed.
My nieces and nephews, they're all they're teenagers, 10, 11, 12. They've lived here their whole life. They don't know a damn word of Spanish, but but I try to teach them about our state, though. I mean, I had a teacher, Roberta Norwood. She's an African American lady in third grade. She taught me about free Kansas, about Nicodemus, about our state's rich history as a territory and then a state, and always, essentially fighting the good fight, for justice and equality. And try to I engage kids as a whole that way now, because when they hear that I was a soldier, they look, oh, this guy's a patriot, But I try to instill something different in them, to where I tell them, if you really want to be a patriot, become civically engaged. And then I tell them about our history as a state, and they become prouder as Kansans. So honestly, I think it's the teaching of our history first, and the significance of our state and what it means to actually vote here, since its conception. I mean, we need to know uh, why Kansas was against slavery, and why, we were at the forefront of Brown versus Board of Education, because when at key points in the history of our country, Kansas has always been on the right side, and that's the message we need to put out there to kids. It's all like, you're the dreamers, you're the new ones, you're going to be the ones that take us to that next level as a populace in this country. So
Thank you, Martine.
I think I wish more people realized the power of or vote. And there are absolutely elections all the time that are won by one vote. And that one vote is going to make a difference as to what policies are passed at different levels, what who's going to be included, how the different programs that are going to take place at different levels. So there's so much power in every single vote. And the second thing I wish more people realized is the importance of having these conversations about the elections and how to engage in them with our friends and neighbors and our communities. Because somehow we think that it's taboo, that we don't want to, or maybe we assume that everyone knows and we're the only ones being left out. We're the only ones that don't understand all of it or aren't sure about everything. And that's completely not true. Everyone's trying to figure it out at the same time. And every single vote can make a huge impact. So having those conversations, going with our friends to the polling location, looking up our candidates with our community, and attending those town halls to figure out who we want to vote for. Not everyone knows how to do everything, but we have a village, so let's all remind each other. I think we really underestimate just how many more people around us could use that little boost to go to the polling location and look up the candidates. So don't take anything for granted and make it a fun activity. I love elections, and I love talking to my friends and neighbors and family about it. And I also love how much of a difference we can make together. So don't think of it as boring. Don't think about it as overwhelming. Just think about it as the big difference that you'll be able to make with your community if you participate.
Thank you, Aude.
I think, gosh, to Aude's point and Martin's point, I think back to like the Sarah Lopez election, for example, that one's just fresh in my mind. I think she won by like 200 and some votes. 200 people went out and they voted and they made that big difference over Michael O'Donnell for her. That's an easy example to run to, where we could have not had Latino representation in this county commissioner's office, right? She was the first Latina to be elected there in Wichita, or in Central County, I'm sorry. So that one's an easy one. I mean, there's not a time. I have been known to register voters during their patient appointments before. I mean, it is part of public health, truly, right? We're talking like, hey, you're stressed, you're anxious because of this election. Great. Are you registered to vote? No? Okay, well, you know what? Let's make this happen. Your vote matters. Truly, I have a patient that's coming next month because they said, well, it doesn't matter. And I was like, nope, at your next patient appointment, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about it, and I will register you to vote. And they were like, oh my God, but yes, I'll come. But you truly can do it anywhere. It's so important to have those open conversations. During the abortion referendum, I had many, many, many patients who were, wanting birth control because they were scared. And my question was always, well, are you registered to vote? So you can do it anywhere. You can ask anyone. You can always have a teaching moment. And there's many examples to point to.
I think that because I used to be a very pessimistic person when it came to politics, right? I used to be one of those that was like, well, Kansas is going to go however Kansas is going to go, and there's no way, right? But then somebody explained to me like that sort of domino effect of that thinking, right? Of like, well, I'm not going to go because that person is going to go, but what if that person doesn't go because they think the other person is going to go, and then so on and so forth, right? So it's like the way that we think about politics and the way that we speak about it, that's why I love what you just mentioned earlier about like make it fun, is because if we all talk so pessimistically about it, it just sounds boring. And on paper it sounds boring, right? So like it takes people like us who like are willing to like step out and make this fun or make this at least engaging, right? Because sometimes the conversations don't have to be necessarily fun, sometimes they are tough, but making them like feasible and making them digestible, I really like that. And to me, if I was to tell someone why they should go out and vote, is because if not you, then who? Like it is an honor and it's an absolute privilege to be able to vote, because we have that privilege. I gained that privilege when I was 15, right, when I became a U.S. citizen, and like at the time I didn't think about it, but by the time I was 19, I was like, geez, like I'm one of the few, right? So it's like the fact that we have that and really elevating that as a privilege and as an honor, I think throughout our communities is very, very, very important, because we have it now because someone else did something for us. So why not seeing it
Yeah.
that way?
Thank you, Alejandro. And you just reminded me, like in 2018, when a group of women organized to register more Latinos to vote, I remember some families were gathering on Sundays and asking for their paper ballot. And they were like filling it out as like they were playing Loteria. So like definitely we can make it a lot more fun. Thank you, Martin, for coming back. And so you just came back in time for me to thank you, all of you. The time really went pretty fast. You guys all brought very valuable information, and I really value your time and all the work that you guys are doing in the community. Even if it's doing like dual job like Luisa, where you're helping people with their health and also with their mind, like have a peace in mind when they register to vote and really start doing something instead of just staying pessimistic, like Alejandro said. Thank you. And I'm just going to give you an opportunity to say whatever to our audience before we leave. And for those of you who just joined us, like Angela Martinez and others late, we're going to have this. It's going to stay there in our Facebook and also on YouTube. So you feel welcome to share it and leave your comments still after we're gone. But now it's all for you to just say whatever we left out.
I first of all, I want to thank you, Claudia, and everyone else for making this space, which is so important, especially at such a critical moment before the elections. I want to remind everyone that counties can start voting 20 days before the election. So you can vote early, get out of the way. If you need help figuring out your early polling location or your polling location the day of the election, or if you want to know more about your ballot and the candidates that are on it, you can go to ksboleta.org or ksballot.org. And that's a nonprofit, nonpartisan website where there is a compilation of the different candidates, and you can look up your address and see what's going to come up, and you can look it up, research it, bring your friends and neighbors and your comunidad, because that's how we're going to be able to have more and more of a voice, and our community will be able to be better. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Aude.
I think if I was to say anything, I'll probably just remind our community that, we already make this country, a better country. So why not take one more step and contribute more to that civic side of things, and to not be afraid to step up to the, up to the dance floor. We love baile, so why not dance in this ballroom that we call politics, right? Earlier I called it a monster, but I'm trying to be more positive because Claudia reminded me too. But just being able to step out there and being able to take up some of that space. The table has only so many chairs, so bring your own, and just step in there, and don't be afraid to use people like us as resources, or your schools, or whatever it may be. Research information, gather your data, and make your own decision, whatever that decision may be. Just be informed.
Thank you, Alejandro.
I would say don't forget there is a deadline to register to vote. I believe that is October 18th. You can register online, you can register in person, you can register by mail, and yeah, request those early ballots so you don't have to stand in line. Recently we've seen a really, really long lines day of election. So vote early, vote with friends, vote with your coworkers. I usually at lunchtime, I'm just like, okay, everybody, why don't we go vote today all together now? So yeah, call your friends, your family, get to vote.
I was just, my parting shot really would say, we all need to network a little bit better, and we're all guilty of it because we're all leaders in our own right, and we can get out there and persuade our family members, especially after a lot of us voted no, and we were able to secure the rights of a lot of ladies out there, a lot of our family members and unprotected folks. And I think there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So I think we should kind of ride this wave into something nice, and really try to keep this momentum up and get people to keep on voting and participating in the democratic process. But also, I'm just going to continue to guilt trip people too, and everything. Be like, I fought for your right to vote, baby. Come on, get out there and do the job.
Well, thank you, Martin, for your service, and thank you all of you for your service in this country. I think all of you are serving in different ways. I want to thank all of our audience. Some of you got a little later, but Renee, thank you. She's thanking all of you. She says, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Angela, and all of you who have been here with us today. And if you got late, you have the opportunity to see it again. The recording will remain on our social media and YouTube channel. Thank you, guys. Let's continue to rock these communities. You're right, Alejandro. My beloved and journalist that I admire so much, Maria Hinojosa, said one time when in a conference, we came here to make love, not to hate people. So let's continue making love. Thank you very much, and see you all very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.